I would like to do one more little session on concept, and then we'll set up some accounts tonight. We'll let you guys kind of go in and play whatever you want to play tonight or whatever, okay? We'll set up some accounts, and then we'll kind of call that for our day type thing. And I imagine we'll kind of get to that point, okay? I would like to go over and actually ask Ethan. We were talking at the drinking fountain about a number of different things. And right before we left our last break, he was talking about Ford Automotive and starting to do this production line type thing. Different people are adding on and different things. And then there's a cool side of this story. Ford did it this way, and they set up this neat thing. And then Toyota came in and actually created this thing called lean manufacturing. So instead of doing like Ford, where they're like, batch this all, let's store it all in a warehouse, and we'll store all this in a warehouse, we'll store all this in a warehouse, it required so much overhead to keep all of these pieces. And then they were like, okay, we need to do this. And then they would pull from all these pieces, but if anything needed to change, guess what? Thousands of dollars in product were sitting there like, oh, we changed that, I can't use that anymore. And so Toyota created this thing called lean manufacturing. They're like, I love that assembly line thing, but what if I just had it come just in time, okay? And what if I just had this sneak in? What if I just had this sneak in? So rather than having all these big, huge assets and big buildings and big stuff like this, what if you did that? Well, Chris and I, we were actually talking about a very similar subject, talking about just-in-time calculations, okay? So say you have a spreadsheet, okay? It's getting fed data, and then you already have these cool formulas. You already know, like, once I get this data, whatever the daily sales was and whatever this daily thing was, eventually I can cascade it out to here, to here, to here, okay? You don't have to actually like, okay, I'm going to hold all this data, and I'm going to hold all this data, and I'm going to hold all this data, put it in all these journals and stuff like this. What if you did just-in-time calculations? Just like they do just-in-time inventory. Just a concept. Just a kind of a random concept. Can I turn it back to you for a second and kind of like let you kind of say what we were talking about at the drinking fountain a little bit? And you may have already changed subjects, like, oh man, what
yeah, I was talking to Steve about so many things that to refresh my memory.
Okay, so we were out there, and one of Ethan's things that he would like to do is he would actually like to set up a team to actually help sell this thing. And what we would like to do is he's like, I can totally see it, how you have this person that does the sale, and this person that does this, and this person that does this. Doesn't it kind of almost sound like just-in-time type deal? What you're doing, and I'm not talking about selling Adilas right now, but I'm talking about this. And then he said a magic word, and he says, man, you just kind of like hit a brick wall, and you like that's kind of the little refresher, if you will, to kind of like, I'm going to pull up a brick wall, because I happen to bring a brick wall. And we were talking a little bit about this thing that I'm going to call it tradition, okay? So here is my brick wall. Let's have a little discussion real quick. Ethan, turn it over to you.
So what I'm trying to figure out, since I'll never do the back end of this, it's just not my mentality, is my mentality is to franchise companies. And the idea is, what is the sizzle that overcomes people's anxiety? And the anxiety of this whole product is tradition. He nailed it. Is that we've been doing this a long time, don't rock the boat. But the tradition has problems. So one of the things I wanted to learn while I was here in the next couple of weeks is, what do you guys know? What can we begin to isolate of what would overcome that tradition? I walk into this young lady's office. She's been doing QuickBooks for 20 years. What is her anxiety about QuickBooks? What are the things that people say, I hate this, and narrow down our focus on the front end to just those things that we know, I just dropped all their guard. Most of the stuff we're talking about is back-end stuff, which is great, but for a sales team, for this to go national, for this to really go, it has to be sold. And an accountant who already has an in with that company can sell anything. Well, that's not going to be most of our clients. Most of our clients will not already have an inside accountant who knows Steve, and yes, oh yeah, I'll do this, I already know how to do this. So what are the hot buttons that you guys have come across that when an owner hears that, he goes, wait a minute, hold my next meeting. I thought I was going to throw you out of here, but I want to talk to you. Are you telling me you can do this, this, and this, and solve this, this, and this problem? I only want those 10 things. That's all I need to take this nationals. What are those 10 things that are the most important things that this thing does for a company? We nail that and it actually can do it well. This thing's ready to launch. What are those things? That's what I'm hoping to find out.
So I'm going to put a little spin on it. That's his angle on it. What I would kind of like to do is actually open up a discussion. What are some current frustrations that we have either with normal tracking of data or normal business or how we take it to the next level? What are some possible frustrations? And what are kind of some of the brick walls that we're hitting, or like, oh, this is going awesome, all going on. Okay, we just broke it. Or, oh, wow, that's really hard to overcome this. Just curious. I just would actually like to open up a little discussion. And so lots of times when you're teaching a class, you can instructor-led, student-led, group activities. I'd like to have a little open discussion. People who are volunteering, people who are doing this type of thing. And what I would kind of like to do is, what do we see as some brick walls? And what we're going to try to do is, eventually I would love to even show you some ways that we've found that we can bypass them and or they no longer exist. And so I can't promise that I will solve everything. I really can't. Okay? But I'd like to just kind of have an open discussion a little bit. Like, what is a frustration? What is it that, I had mentioned this earlier, we ended up skipping it. But what is the problem and to what level does it go before it breaks? And then how do we respond and create a solution for that? Okay? It's very important that we realize that it's mostly, you get a problem, and eventually you kind of create a solution or you come up with something. I heard back there, and maybe, Craig, if you're okay, I'd like to start it. When you first started with Morningstar, you were doing this, and this. Can you kind of explain just a little bit about what you were doing?
Well, basically I was doing anything that needed to be done.
Okay.
I did a little mechanic work. I would do car detailing. I would help transport vehicles from the auction to the sales lot, or then I would do, helping install toppers. We'd sell toppers for trucks as well. And then I would do some of the banking, sales tax, just basically anything that had to be done. It was such a small company then, we were starting up, and everything, of course, had to be done right away. And I mean, there was limited manpower, so you just stepped in and did it.
Okay, great. Let's springboard off of that. Anybody have any comments? And I'd kind of like to open this up as a discussion. What are either brick walls, or what are we seeing as taking that next step? Let's push something until it breaks, and then let's go further. Or let's push something like, ooh, I don't even want to touch that. And like, how do we go to that level? How do we go to that level? Well, let's just kind of stir on that for just a second and see what you think. And I know that this is slightly different. You're like, wow, why are we talking about this? Can I tell you a little history? And this might start the ball rolling, okay? When I started working for Morningstar, basically I came in and they had me work as data, just data entry stuff, okay? At that time, they had multiple locations and they were tracking their inventory on a spreadsheet, okay? Steve had created this spreadsheet, but guess how they got it from store to store to store?
Somebody carried it?
Yes.
Snail mail and a zip disk, okay?
Floppy disk.
Actually, so some sort of media. They would package it up, send it next day to 2-3 cities away. They would get it, load it onto their computer. The next person would ship it up, more shipping charges, get it to the next company. 2 weeks, 2-week cycle, okay? And by the time it got back around, how accurate was that data? How much money was spent? Tons. $30, easy, per transfer, easy, okay? So we got in here, we chased our tails, and finally we're like, there's got to be an easier way. We had salespeople who were selling stuff that had already been sold, but according to their data, it existed. we had other people who were like, somebody would come in and be like, hey, I really want a Ford F-150 pickup truck. And we're like, I've got 250s and 350s, and but they didn't know that Canyon City actually had a brand new one on the road. So what we did to solve that little micro problem is we said, let's centralize the data. So we had one guy start saying, hey, anything that we get new or sold, you run it through me. So he was kind of the pivotal point. And he would do this, and then they would say, Brandon, put this up. We stuck it up online. All of a sudden, we centralized this data. And what happened was, is instead of a 2-week process, this was still on spreadsheet. This was still on spreadsheet. All of a sudden, each store could pull it down, and we would put a date next to it. How old, how new is this little spreadsheet, okay? Oh, wow, got new data today. Like, no shipping charges, no nothing. They just were able to pull it down. We started centralizing the data. Well, then guess what happened? We then started going in towards the web, and we still had more and more problems. And eventually, I took a class here at Bridgerland and said, let's learn how to use computers and databases and stuff. And we kind of started creating this little application. And then the next step was like, well, what if we could do this? What if we could? I kind of like to just talk just a little bit about, basically, you run into a problem. You have a real live problem, and then what do you do to kind of, if you hit a brick wall, it's no fun, okay? It kind of stops things. Sometimes painfully. Trust me, I've hit a few things. That's a different story. I would like to turn this into a discussion. I know I've kind of like, kind of leading it all around. Does anybody have a comment that they would like to make? Either a frustration or a thing that they love that they have seen that goes forward. Doesn't even have to be Adilas related.
Hugh just sent me an email, and he said his question, Ethan's question is Hugh's question as well.
Okay, great. So, Steve, can I push on you for a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
What would you answer? Okay, let's rephrase the question. What is it that Adilas does either different or special, or could be a potential hot thing?
To resolve the brick wall?
Either to resolve a brick wall or to get around it, or like, most people don't like hitting brick walls, especially at high speeds. Have you solved that problem?
Well, you mentioned when a client has a challenge, I like to look at it as a challenge, I guess you'd say, and they're wanting to capture, or maybe they're wanting to tie data together, like you guys went through the exercise back there. So we do use FlexGrid a lot, but we also kind of come up with some unique ideas within the system where you can adapt, if you will, to the process. And if I had to say anything about setting up a unique type client like that, is what you have to do is you have to spend more time trying to find out exactly what the challenges are, or what the frustrations are that client has, and then you have to think of how you could run it through the system, and then you present them with that scenario, and if that goes through to their liking, then you've accomplished that goal. In a sense, you've eliminated a brick wall. I can tell you this too, it's really interesting. A lot of times a client, their brick wall that they'll have, or a company that the brick wall they'll have, is something that we easily can get around. You know, because we do have there's so many dynamic functions and features that we already have, that a lot of times just because they aren't Adilas users, they don't know that. So maybe they're stuck in some other, program or some other method that they're doing to track their inventory, or wherever the concern is, and then they feel like they're up against that brick wall, and then once we show them how we can handle it a little differently in Adilas, and sometimes it's just a little change, just a little shift, and then they're like, okay, that works great. Another solution, and Brandon hates this, but he gets phone calls at 7 o'clock at night or whatever, and we talk for an hour, and it's like, here's what I think we could add to it. So we already have this. We already have these functions, and I hate to use the word one-to-many relationship, but there's a lot of times I'll call Brandon up knowing darn good and well what I'm going to ask him is to build a one-to-many relationship off of a relationship that already exists in the system. And a lot of times that's the solution, you know, to what they're looking for. So I think to answer that question, quite honestly, is I try my best to use the existing tools and functions that we have within the system to help the client get through, around, or over the brick wall, and or then we start kind of going outside the box a little bit, if you will. And we always try to keep it within the constraints of what accounting is going to do, how it's going to impact the balance sheet, how it's going to impact the income statement. So we don't build something that's like wild and crazy that will not balance. We build it to where it will flow through, but we do adaptations, I guess you would say, to, you know, what we have. And that's, in a nutshell, that's one of the most exciting things for me working in this company, is that it's not, we don't have a static we don't have a static service or a static product, to use Brandon's static and dynamic. Ours is, you know, we have more of a dynamic solution.